Ever feel like some folks have just checked out of the whole political scene, like their voices aren't being heard, so why bother?
Mhm.
We're diving into something pretty fascinating today, how AI might be able to bridge that gap.
It's intriguing, isn't it? We often talk about like the echo chambers of social media, but
Yeah.
what if we could use AI to actually break through those barriers and understand what matters to people who are typically disengaged from politics?
Right. And for this deep dive, we're turning to AI expert Lee Chazen.
Okay.
He has a bunch of videos online where he dives into some really wild AI applications.
Hmm.
One that really caught my eye, how AI can decode and make sense of the language different groups use.
He calls them mimic tribes.
Mm-hmm.
These pockets of people online on platforms like Reddit or even in niche blog communities, they start developing almost their own dialects, their own ways of expressing themselves.
Okay, so how does AI even come into play here?
AI can actually analyze the nuances of language within these groups.
Hmm.
It's not just about individual words, but the context, the sentiment, the way they string those words together to create meaning.
So, like, how would that even work in practice?
Well, imagine a group of CFOs on a finance forum.
Okay.
They use certain jargon,
Hmm.
specific ways of talking about financial data.
Right.
AI can pick up on those patterns, analyze the frequency of certain phrases, even the underlying sentiment, whether they're optimistic about a market trend or expressing caution.
And then use that information to, what, communicate with them more effectively?
Exactly. Chazen gives this great example of companies using AI to analyze the language of CFOs in financial reports to tailor their marketing materials.
Interesting.
So instead of generic sales pitches, they're speaking the CFO's language, addressing their specific concerns and interests.
Okay, so I see how that works for, like, selling software to a CFO.
Mhm.
But we're talking about politics, people's deeply held beliefs and values. Can you really use the same techniques to engage someone who feels completely alienated by the political system?
That's where it gets really interesting. Imagine if you could take that same concept, analyzing language, to understand a group and apply it to people who are disillusioned with politics, people who feel like politicians don't speak their language,
Ugh.
literally and figuratively. What if, instead of writing them off, we could actually start to understand why they feel that way?
Okay, now we're getting somewhere. So you're saying AI could potentially help us bridge this massive disconnect between the political elite and everyday people who feel like their voices aren't being heard.
Exactly. And it all starts with listening, but not just passive listening. It's about using AI to truly understand the hopes, fears, and frustrations buried within the language people use every day.
All right, I'm hooked. So AI can analyze how people talk online, maybe even figure out what makes them tick politically. But then Chasen takes it a step further, right? He starts talking about using this information to create data sets, treasure troves of insights into the minds of voters.
Yeah.
Let's unpack that. So AI can analyze how people talk online, maybe even figure out what makes them tick politically. But then Chasen takes it a step further, right? He starts talking about using this information to create data sets, treasure troves of insights into the minds of voters.
Data sets, yeah. He highlights how these online conversations on Reddit, blogs, forums can be transformed into incredibly valuable data sets. It's like taking the pulse of a community. But instead of a single snapshot, you're getting this constant stream of insights, right?
He uses this really interesting example of analyzing Reddit threads to gauge customer sentiment about a product. So instead of just looking at sales figures, companies can now tap into what people really love or hate about their product. Could the same principle be applied to understanding political views?
Absolutely. Imagine taking those same AI-powered tools and using them to analyze political discussions online. You could identify the issues that are really hitting home with disengaged voters, the concerns they have, the language they use to express those concerns.
It's like instead of just hearing the loudest voices in the room, the ones who are already deeply engaged, we could actually start to understand the whispers of those who have tuned out.
Exactly. And here's where it gets even more fascinating. Chazen talks about using a tool like otter.ai to transcribe his tutoring sessions. Then he uses AI to analyze those transcripts, pinpointing exactly where a student struggled or excelled.
Okay, I'm seeing the parallels here, but walk me through it. How does tutoring connect to understanding political apathy?
It's about identifying patterns and insights from raw data. Just like AI can pinpoint a student's pain points in a transcript, it can also analyze political discourse to uncover the why behind people's opinions. What are the underlying reasons for their apathy? What experiences have shaped their views?
So it's not just about figuring out what people think, but why they think that way. It's about going beyond the surface level and understanding the deeper motivations and experiences that shape their political outlook.
Precisely. It's about using AI to create a more nuanced and empathetic understanding of the electorate, even or perhaps especially those who feel alienated from the political process.
It's kind of mind-blowing to think that we could use the same technology to understand complex political issues as like customer reviews or even tutoring sessions.
Yeah.
But what really struck me in all of this is the potential to reach those who feel left out of the political process.
It's a powerful idea, isn't it? What if instead of writing off apathetic voters, we could actually use AI to understand their perspectives and bring them back into the fold?
Chazen seems to think this is possible. He talks about how AI could help us identify the root causes of political apathy. Like, what are the issues, the experiences, the frustrations that have led people to disengage?
And imagine if we could take those insights and use them to craft political messages that actually resonate with those individuals. Messages that address their specific concerns, acknowledge their lived experiences, and offer solutions that feel relevant to their lives.
So instead of trying to fit everyone into a one-size-fits-all political box, we could actually tailor our approach to meet people where they are.
Precisely. It's about recognizing that people disengage from politics for a multitude of reasons. Some feel unheard, some feel overwhelmed, some feel like the system simply doesn't work for them. AI has the potential to help us understand these nuances and create a more inclusive and responsive democracy.
So it's not about manipulating people with AI, but about using it as a tool for empathy and understanding, a way to bridge the divides that have left so many feeling disillusioned and disconnected.
Exactly. It's about using technology to amplify the voices of those who have been silenced, to create a space for dialogue where everyone feels heard and respected, even if they don't agree on every issue.
This deep dive has given me a lot to consider. It's both exciting and a little daunting to think about the potential impact of AI on our political landscape. But what do you think is the biggest takeaway for our listeners?
I think the most important thing is to be aware of the possibilities, both positive and potentially challenging.
Right.
AI is a tool, and like any tool, it can be used for good or for ill. The future of our democracy depends on our collective wisdom and engagement in shaping how this technology is used.
Beautifully said. So to our listeners out there, keep asking questions, stay curious, and let's work together to build a future where technology helps us connect with each other in more meaningful and productive ways.
Indeed.
And on that note, thanks for joining us for another fascinating deep dive. Until next time, keep exploring.